on how STEM disciplines are coping with the age of disruption. Right? This would be an interesting topic because we are going to look at how education is going to be disrupted because we are teaching science, technology, engineering, and medicine. So my name is Benjamin Hua, and I'm the Provost at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And today with us we have 4 speakers, but on the stage now you are only seeing 3, including myself. The 4th one is coming at this point, so he will be a few minutes late. And we have the speakers the following: Professor Shijie, who is the director of the Tsinghua massively online open courses at the Tsinghua University. Dr. Rinat Iskakov, Provost at Satpayev University. Professor Alex James, Associate Professor, School of Engineering, Nazarbayev University. And Mr. Almas Tuyakbayev, who is the CEO of 0 to 1 Labs. And Mr. Almas will be joining us in a few minutes. So today, as we let me get the session started, and we would allow each speaker to have 7 minutes to state their position. And afterwards, after all the speakers have made their positions, then we would open up the pigeonhole, and you can enter your questions online. We would look at the questions posted by the audience in the pigeonhole, and then take the questions one at a time, depending on how popular those questions are. So that's how we would go about in today's session. Now, to get the session started, let me say something about what we are looking at today. So on the screen, I want to post the background and the backdrop on what we are discussing today: how STEM disciplines are coping with the age of disruption. So we are looking at innovations for STEM discipline. And of course, we want to be disruptive. We want to look at and see how we should teach STEM courses more effectively. So now the goal of what we are looking at is a whole person development. Meaning that we are teaching our students so that they can continue to learn, they become reputable or disciplined citizens in the society that can contribute to society in the long run. And they have, after they got out from the university, they have almost 40 to 50 years ahead of them in terms of their working career. So as far as the teaching for STEM is concerned, our target audience is that we may be looking at students enrolled in STEM or students not enrolled in STEM. They don't have to be student majoring in STEM. They can be outside of the major coming to take some courses in STEM. How do we teach those students? What kind of innovations do we need in teaching those students? They can also be lifelong learners, meaning that they don't have to be students in the university. They could have finished their career many years ago, but they are now coming to the university to take courses. They are interested in something to enhance their career by taking courses related to STEM. So again, how do we teach students in those areas? Today we are looking at innovation. Basically, like I would classify them as tools and techniques, meaning that like we are developing disruptive tools to see how we can help people learn STEM topics more effectively. Now, a related topic is assessment and quality assurance. After you have taught those courses to the students, how do you assess the performance and how do you ensure that the quality will be maintained? So against the backdrop, I want to give to you some of the attributes in whole person development, because this is the goal of what we are teaching students about. For example, appreciation of the value of a broad range of intellectual disciplines as well as general knowledge, have gained a depth of knowledge within a specialty, not only as an end in itself, but also as a vehicle for experience in serious studies and inquiry, have a high level of language proficiency, collection of skills including numeracy, analytic skills, IT capability, ability to contribute, continue with lifelong learning, professional development, cultivated a habit of reading widely, and learn to be critical and independent, effective in communication and working in a team, deep understanding of culture with it and a sense of national identity and pride, and appreciation of other cultures, and with that appreciation also of a high degree of intercultural sensitivity, tolerance, and a global perspective, have an attitude of compassion, honesty, and integrity in relation to itself, family, and society, and the ability to contribute as citizens and leaders, have a sense of purpose, responsibility, and commitment in life, in desire to serve, as well as taste in their pursuits. So this would be something that when we educate our students, we want them to be able to graduate with these attributes. And this is what is important, because teaching students STEM is a vehicle, is a tool. We allow them to acquire the knowledge in STEM, but at the end, we want the students to be a good citizen, to be able to think critically and independently and contribute to society and community. So this is what is important in our education pursuit. So with that background, I would now pass on to our panel members. So first, Professor Yu.
Good morning, everyone. It's my honor to share my presentation. Thank you. It's my honor to share the online education and blended learning in Tsinghua University. First, a very brief introduction to Tsinghua University. Tsinghua is one of China's most renowned university. It was established in 1911, and we have 20 schools and 58 departments. We have nearly 3,500 faculty and over 47 students. The Chinese President Xi Jinping and the former President Hu Jintao are both our alumni. Tsinghua stands out in rankings, and our engineering and computer science is ranked the #1 in the latest rankings. Why do we do MOOCs in Tsinghua? One reason is the world is evolving, and we seldom use wallets in China, since we can use mobile phone to do mobile payments everywhere. The shared bicycle make the short distance commute much easier than before. We can use our mobile to scan the code to unlock the bicycle everywhere, to go anywhere we want to go. Technology affects the students much. Look what the students were doing in the break in their military training. The learning pattern are changing a lot. Everyone have a laptop, iPad, phone, cell phone in the school, in the university. the students use segment time to study with their electronic devices. And they don't like lecturing all the time in the class. They prefer flexible desks to do group discussion, to do practice in the class. And they are very used to the multitask learning pattern. For example, they will listening to lecturing and listening to music, talking to his friends through internet, and so on. But electronic devices could not be absent. So Tsinghua University put online education as the future strategy in 2013. And we established a leading group led by our president and established our office to do the online education in the university and outside the university. We launched the MOOC platform Xuetang X in 2013. According to ClassCentral, Xuetang X is the third largest platform, a MOOC platform in the world. Many good quality MOOCs, many registers from nearly all over the world. So we are the online education platform for UNESCO's ICEE, and we are the online education platform for graduate students from engineering disciplines. We do variety forms of teaching in MOOCs. For example, some MOOCs are taught by the professors in the university and the experts from the industry. So the MOOCs are closely linked to the industry and the trend. We built some MOOCs, relevant MOOCs to a series, a MOOCs group, to help better learning for the learners. How do we take the full advantage of MOOCs? We can combine the online courses with the traditional education in the classroom to improve our education quality and efficiency on campus. We can enhance the interaction between teachers and the students, make the transition to student-centered teaching by doing MOOCs to do the knowledge instruction part. And we can do the ability cultivation and value formation in the classroom. Here is the blended learning in Tsinghua University. All the disciplines are taught in blended teaching pattern, and it covered nearly all kinds of courses. Here are some examples for STEM disciplines. Professor Shijie taught principle of circuits in China. He used the blended learning pattern for 5 years. And his MOOCs and his blended learning teaching model are widely used in the other Chinese universities. According to the comparison, we can see the blended learning class get much higher scores in the examination, still a higher satisfaction from the students. So the same result in the other universities in China. Here's another example, finite element analysis application from the Department of Mechanical Engineering. The course combines online lectures with offline case study to enable students have more time to gain hands-on experience during the class. For the course combinatorics, the teacher combined online video learning with offline quizzes, discussions, and other activities in class to make the students more involved by a smart teaching tool named Ring Classroom. Ring Classroom is a smart teaching tool developed by our office. We do the data collecting and the data pre-process when students have class interaction, self-studying, and experiments, doing experiments. And we do use the data distilling to the cloud. Then the teacher can teach according to the student's ability by analyzing the data in the cloud. So the Rain classroom has many functions, and there are many interfaces for the teachers and the students to have a better understanding about their teaching process and the learning process. Now a brief future outlook. We use artificial intelligence and machine learning technology to build a lifelong learning partner on Xue Many professors and postgraduate students to do the research, and many patents and papers come out. We will use augmented reality and virtual reality in our MOOCs more in the future. And another smart education tool named Wisdom Experiment. We try to record the experiment process and generate rich media report automatically. So at the end, what could we do together? First, I think we can cooperate to build some excellent MOOCs based on our professional foundation and strong influence in Tsinghua and our partners to build excellent MOOCs together. We can share high-quality knowledge and lead a trend, as well as enhance the international influence. We can also design international blended learning program, as I talked with the Vice President summer school this summer. We can combine online learning and offline international summer school and internship practices to build a global talent education system. And we can explore a certificate or joint program, just like what the American and Britain universities do. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so next we have Dr. Rinat Iskakov, and he would have 7 minutes. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Nazarbayev University, for this 8 generous minutes to speak with a great audience. So, may I get here? So the world changed rapidly, and now university is no longer monopoly for education and knowledge now. And what skills and knowledge university should transfer to these students in this context, in the age of disruption? And when digitalizing world makes market change rapidly, so new niche forming in the market, and some old profession disappears in the market very fast. So, for example, in IT sphere, now the new niche in the market appears monthly. So I think now classical education, classical universities will not be able to work basically due to the conservatism and 4-year lack of study. So how to build the right education for STEM disciplines and for technical majors at a breakthrough in the age of disruption. Let me raise some serious existential question now. What we face with how should we teach our students when the world changes quickly? How to build the right balance between fundamental knowledges, applied science, and the professional skills. does it make sense to teach our students and give some professional skills in a field which disappear pretty soon? And for fundamental knowledges, how it's important to give them if Google knows everything. And for applied science, YouTube shows you how to do everything very fast. So the learning everything by clicking the mouse brings a big question: what is the role of university, and what is the role of research and innovation in our study? So in a classical triangle of education, so we have a serious risks, especially the digitalization, machine learning, internet, distance learning. All the things brings the disruption to and some destructive effect on the fundamental knowledges and applied knowledges which we give. So on the other hand, the professional orientated the learning, when some professions could disappear potentially in the market, so how it impact on this professional orientated model to teach? So this question, let me bring back to our reality, to our country, and in my opinion, so our education, it's a like distorted triangle, where we have this is just from my own experience, because I manage both universities, private and national one. So we have the massive angle of professional skills learning now, basically for a current market, sometimes even for a past-orientated market. So we have also the small portion of fundamental knowledges, which actually classically came from Soviet education. And we have a negligible part of applied knowledges, which we give in our universities. So such construction, in fact, they are beyond past-orientated education. Mostly we give, this is unsustainable and bring a high risk for existence at the age of disruption. Especially in the professional part of our curricula, which actually very sensitive to the age of disruption, to change in the market. In our view in Satpayev University, we believe that fundamental knowledge, fundamental part should be, which is less sensitive to the world change, should be substantial part of the curricula. It's like the common core in Nazarbayev University. So it helps your graduates in the future to be flexible and competitive on the market. When I speak about the applied part of our study, so we have to leave classrooms and desks pretty soon as possible, and move to fab labs for co-working, startups, etc. This is very important for the current education. And maybe the most sensitive part to the market, the professional skills, it could be offered as a graduate module at the last year. So let me give some examples what we have encountered at our university, actually. The most serious problem for profound fundamental knowledge, which we give our students, and this is a problem throughout the country. Of course, the Nazarbayev University, very lucky getting 1% of the top selected admission from the country with an excellent mathematical grammar level. But look at the table here. So what is a problem now which is serious, especially in STEM disciplines and especially particularly in the math? It's a lack of knowledge for the student who graduated from high school. So namely, our secondary education doesn't fulfill the minimum their own standard. So 95% of our students who got in high school in math, A is a B, 4 or 5, they actually in a first semester, this is the fall semester 2016, 50% of them, they got either 2 or 3, F or C and D in our school. So so practically we saw the same picture for other STEM disciplines like chemistry, physics, etc. So of course we could blame the shortcoming of our secondary education, but in fact we have to work with such reality. So what we did and tried to do this in the case of this situation, for better fundamental knowledge, we implemented diagnostic tests for all STEM disciplines. Maybe this experience would be useful for other universities, of course, except Nazarbayev University. But this is important for us. Like in a fall semester in 2017, 65% of our students who didn't pass the diagnostic test, they learned pre-calculus. So and eventually it helps us to align mathematical level for all students in the next semester. In spite of my professional education, I used to be a process engineer in the oil field for several years. I came to bitter conclusion that education, which is based on the massive professional skills, even future-oriented professions, makes your student vulnerable on the market. They are not competitive if something changes on the market. And moreover, what I believe, they're not flexible to find a new profession if market change. So thank you very much for your attention. Yeah.
So next we have Dr. Alex James, and you have 7 minutes. Yeah.
Hello. Is it all audible? Yes. Yeah, okay, great. So my talk title is Infinite Process, because it's a modern day academics pain, right? And in a new university, you're expected to do everything and anything under the umbrella. And the disruption is not going to disrupt the professors, but also the entire profession in some way. So I would just go through some of the ideas. So first thing I would like to talk about is connections, right? So I'm a neuromorphic engineer. So what it means is like I look at the brain, look at the networks in the brain, and try to translate this network into electronic circuits. So what works in intelligence in many ways is these networks. If you have these connections broken, there is some new pathways. You add those connections, you create another pathways. Now, you see similar networks everywhere. You see kind of like connected networks everywhere. One such connection is writing papers, right? So you have lots and lots and lots of papers. So what you see here is world population on one side. It's adding up like every decade now, adding 1 billion. And you can see the number of papers that are being published in science and engineering field, almost 2.5 million, right? So if you look at the population and take the proportion of papers that are written, who is going to read it? Right? So there's a lot of words and not many people to read. But what we are doing on the other hand as human species is we are killing off all the other species. Okay? So we are going through the largest extinction of other species in the world. Now we like to rank everything, right? Rank universities, rank publications. So if you look at like the journal metrics, there's so many journal matrices. And what it does is it's in fact like you're trying to quantify quality. Okay, for a start, we argue against the fact that quantity can't describe quality, yet we do that. And those numbers influence your thinking. Where to publish? Should I publish in that or should I publish in this? And it also drives your emotion. So someone publishes in a low quality, like immediately like, oh, you did a bad job. Or if you didn't publish in the top quality journal, you're not considered as a good scientist anymore, right? So this influences, these emotions influences the judgments. And there are so many scientists out there. You would see PhD students aspiring. I think maybe the first paper that you write as a PhD student may not be in the top science paper or a Nature paper. So if you put that as a barrier, then probably we don't have any scientists anymore. So it's also a perception versus reality. You see, it's the same picture. It's how you see it. You see, on one side you see a drug dealer, gang member, and a car thief, and the reality was very different. The guy was waiting for work, other person was a neighborhood group, and others picking up kids at school. Now that's what we do with the citations and many other things. Scientists would see citation, oh, how many do I have? You know, am I great enough? Leaving my legacy, right? Whereas the sales guys would, the journalists would see page views. They're not worried about your citation. They want to see like how many people are reading the work, right? And then you have the politicians who are cared about they don't care about any of these things. Okay, is it going to, just to give you an example, there was a recent work which was not published, it was archived, and the study was, they were analyzing the faces of criminals. And then trying to use big data analysis to look at a face and say whether you are a criminal or not. Obviously, it created a huge noise among everywhere, from politicians to everything. Now you can't walk in the street anymore, right? Unfortunately, if your face is like a criminal, your life is gone. So, and see, other thing is very interesting is H-index, right? One of the other measure, like every other person asks these days, what is your H-index? So it reaches a point like where you say, like, you lose the sense of reality and say, okay, oh, the girl, you know, she didn't want to go out with you, even though you told her you had an H-index of 37. Boy, I don't understand women. You know? So, you know, and this becomes like, and it's actually like a few years back, about 5-6 years back, many funding agencies, tenure committees to many others were looking at ranking the scientists by H-index. And they immediately found that this was a problem and they removed it completely. So because it's leading to all sort of other things. Because you're told something like this. it's a rat race, right? Whether the universities, whether the citations, whether all these things, it's a rat race. And you're always told, shut up, you moron, you have to be, you have been told, so it's for your own good. And we are here. So wait, it's just a matter of time, right? And what is pushing this? University ranking. So all these university ranking, because you want to prove yourself that you are the best. Because the politicians want it, funding agencies want it, everyone wants it. So that goes back into the thing. Now I'll simply talk about engineering, what engineering is, right? So there is, we solve problems. Engineers solve problem. Materials are same in all these three cases. You see liberal arts, they make money. And scientists, you look at science, I mean, it's perfect. You get perfect balance and you calculate all the equations and you can publish a nice paper. Now what engineers are asked to do now, okay, make money, publish papers and solve problems. So you need to do science, you need to learn liberal arts and you need to solve problems. Okay, so that's what we are doing with all these changes in education and so on and so forth. So what are the enablers? Research grants. If you remember, like population is growing, so are the needs, so are the money doesn't grow immediately. There are a lot of poor people in the world. They don't want to write papers. Only scientists want to write papers. Right? So we are short of grants, and we will be, and that's the future. So it's like going, I asked Santa for a research grant. You still believe in research grants? so that will be the scenario that we have to live with. And another interesting thing is interdisciplinary research. What is that? When you think about it, you put like a lot of these people together from very different fields. Let's bring everyone together. There is some friction going on. Everyone fights, right? Many of you professors would know this. You fight with each other. Give it enough time. Heat, light, magic, something will happen. Now, clearly, the thing is, it is still important to have that. Why? Because if you only produce computer engineers, your computer engineer is going to be a surgeon. And his solution will be, let's shut down all the body functions and restart again. Right? So you need that, right? So let me just switch to other thing about making money. Universities actually make a lot of money. A good example is like Stanford. Engineering schools are meant to make a lot of money. We don't do enough. It's not about just publishing. Publishing is only part of the business. So if you look at Stanford, like what do? They raised over 4.1 billion between that period, short period of time. If you look at the number of jobs that they created from 1930s, that's a lot, right, for a single university to create. 40,000 companies, 2.7 trillion annual revenues. This is what we are talking about. So if you want to create a good engineering school, it's not just publications. You need to spend time on this and energy and effort in this. Of course, very important thing, you need to pay people, right? Every other job requires competitive salary. You don't want your professor to turn up like this. Sorry, I'm late to the class, I had to clean out the foyer, right? You don't want to do that. And management, of course, if your professors are not doing well, there is a clear-cut reason. Okay? If there is a lot of white stuff that professor is having, there is a good reason for that. It comes like. Now, there is a very interesting thing that goes in individuals and groups. There are committees everywhere. And this is a way to protect. Now, the problem though is individuals and committees make the same mistake. Ignorance is universal. It's the quality of the people that you have there. It's not the grouping or non-grouping. So you see, there is a non-ignorance. Individually knows the question but not the answer. A non-ignorance, individually knows neither the question nor the answer, and pseudo-knowledge, which we see a lot. We think that he knows the answer, but he knows the question. Okay. And we talked, yesterday I was listening to a lot of talking about, various issues. But, if you look back, there is like Nobel Prize winner C.V. Raman, Raman's spectroscopy. So one of the things that is good science was not created merely by spending money, starting laboratory and passing orders. More important was the human element. And if quality is replaced by quality, then disaster would surely follow. Second thing, the government interference. Government control not only inhibits creativity, but more disastrously, it encourages sloth and intrigue, besides rewarding non-performance. Yes, I'm done. So as just slightly modify the transformer, So given like Astana, cold weather, I thought like it is a good thing. Optimus Prime, I send this message to any surviving professor taking refuge among the stars. We are here, we are waiting, right? That's what we are doing. And what we want is a lot of these guys. If you want to be successful. Thank you.
Our speaker here is Almas Tuyakbayev, so from 0 and 1 lab, and so you came a little late, so we did not get time to introduce you.
Thank you. Sorry for being late. Today I want to talk about the life learning education. Human beings are actually programmed to learn. As Homo sapiens, we are very good at learning, especially when we just born and in our childhood. There is a concept that human being can learn any language where, depending on the culture he was raised in. And that ability diminishes by the age of 11. So the case of Mowgli, the young boy from the jungles, probably is a myth than a truth. So I want to walk through from the childhood to the adulthood, how we learn and what are the fundamental principles and what we do today and how we can do better with the technologies. So how technologies are coping with the disruption in the disruptive age in STEM. When we're born, we are very good learners. We know nothing about the language, about the concepts, but somehow, because of how our neurons entangled with each other, we learn the language, any language. So what happens next? Parents try ourselves in many different areas. So they send us to the sports game. Somebody gets their kids to the music classes. And what they are seeking for is basically what is the natural inclination of this kid for some science, art, or anything else. So what happens next? For example, some kid could be really good at sports, or he could be really interested at tinkering something with their hands. So what happens next? At schools, we have this old system of teaching, but today the technologies and approaches are changing. Long time ago, the education was a privilege for only few number of humanity. But nowadays, the whole society changed, and it's one of the principles and rights of human beings to have a good education. Talent is distributed among the world equally, but the opportunities are not the equal. So we have really good examples. For example, in Finland, that in middle school, teachers are always trying to new approaches to teach kids in a way that it's not boring for them. Another example could be Adastra School, where kids use just technologies for 1 hour a day, and all other time they learn how to communicate with other kids, how to do critical thinking, how they can actually do a thing, it's called Socrates seminars, which is basically when you discuss your ideas, you understand your ideas better. If you want to understand something good, really good, then you have to teach it. So that approach works really well. What happens in higher education, most of the time we have so many technologies and tools nowadays, especially in STEM. We have MOOCs that enables a Mongolian kid to learn more courses that he could get at his high school. And there was a real example. That student was enrolled at MIT because he passed all the courses at MIT's OpenCourseWare platform with good grades. So we have MOOCs, we have emergence of artificial intelligence that helps us to build lifelong partner that will help and will understand whatever knowledge we get in previous years. No professor actually will be with us for our lifetime. We have about 4 years in our undergraduate when we can actually interact with professors, and later on we can do research with them. But there is nobody than ourselves who knows what kind of knowledge we gained through our 10, 20 years of learning. Does the learning ends after the university? No. It just gets even more harder, especially in computer-related fields. I'm a computer science major from Carnegie Mellon, and still nowadays, when we do write code for different apps, we always learn. There are so many new things that you have to cope with just to keep up with the technology advancement. And the most important thing is how we learn. We learn from our peers. We learn from our colleagues. And we learn from open source projects. So open source overall is the thing that enables masses, lots of people to actually know what's going on around the world. So what's next? I think that the biggest change, the next big revolution, as the invention of the book, as the invention of internet that enabled us to get access to the knowledge, would be something in the field of artificial intelligence. When we have these personal assistants, yesterday I tried Google's speech synthesizer, which works really well, that I cannot distinguish that voice from the real human voice. And if we can get the intellect to that one, we can actually have that sense that we have real partner, lifelong partner, that will help us in our learning. He will tell us that, okay, what's next for you is the best knowledge that you need at this moment. So I believe that in next 10 years, we will have those kind of systems that will make us really good life learners. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we can now open up the pigeonhole and see what are the questions we have posted online. All right, so we have the top question is, do you believe that STEM disciplines can be delivered fully through MOOC? I think that's an interesting, I think it is, MOOC has been very popular since I think the early 2010s. And I first attended the Coursera conference and was very sold onto the concept. But today, I think they are gradually moving on to something slightly different. Some of them become more commercial. Some of them is going through every country, the UK, China. So who wants to take this question? Professor Yu? Yeah. Yeah.
This is a good question. I first tell my answer. I don't think STEM disciplines can be all delivered fully while MOOCs. Since for STEM disciplines, there are some practice activity. For example, experiment and some discussion can't be delivered or finished online. But for Udacity, they provide a very good individual help assistance for the learners. So it's a good mode for online education. For the massive open online courses, we can't do very good personal assistance by real teaching assistant. Maybe in the future we have artificial intelligence learning partner, as just my partner said, my colleague said. But I don't think in the recent time we can deliver all the STEM disciplines while MOOCs. No.
Okay, any other views? Yeah, okay, Alex?
Yeah, I think it is true, it is very challenging these days, given the technology that we are using now. But on the other hand, there are attempts being made, like virtual labs and many other things, where practice is the main component, which is the difficult part in an engineering education. How do you make students practice the labs? How do you get them the feel of reality of how things work? And there are technologies like virtual reality and to be able to connect to the real lab that may change this over a period of time. But it's still a tough ask. But I think part of the other thing is how do we, does it offer the flexibility to learn? Because what we have today, STEM disciplines are not at all flexible. So we have four-year degree program, very structured approach to learning engineering, and engineering is problem solving. And to have the real understanding of any topic, it takes probably years. And MOOC can be, in that sense, a useful tool to just get out of this 4-year system and think about something much more flexible. Like project-based learning, or like, having a purely research-integrated learning integrated into the STEM, or like business-oriented learning, whatever works for that particular discipline. So I think it is something for future, maybe, like we might have various different educational options. And just to give you another example, I was reading about one of the universities which were 2,500 years old. And their average degree duration, or the skill, it was a skill base. I mean, they have like, okay, carpentry skill to other skills to other skills. And it took them about 8 years on average for someone to graduate with the skill. So this was 2,000 years back. So maybe we are, and these universities were actually international as well. So people were coming from different places to these places to get trained. So maybe it's just a cycle that's going through. Maybe with technology we might be able to make things better and flexible.
Any other views? Yes, Mas?
I believe that MOOCs are not the solution, but they are really good tools to help us to deliver STEM disciplines to students. So the idea, I really believe that we all need coaches. So goods, like, they are really good source of information. So there are great professors with great MOOCs, and those professors are limited to some universities. So that's the whole idea of MOOCs, making it at scale. So at local points, for example, at Kazakhstan, what we can do with MOOCs, we have great MOOCs from edX, from Coursera, from Tsinghua, and we can use that knowledge and have the local coaches, mentors, that will help us to actually digest that information and actually get the results. The problem with some MOOCs, not all the people complete them. But that's not the idea to complete the MOOCs. They are the source of information. So one person can take up to 20 MOOCs, and he doesn't have to complete all of that. But what we see that with the good help of peer-to-peer pressure, with the good help of coaches, mentors, we can actually get that information, really good knowledge that's been given in MOOCs, and that would be much more helpful. So I think it's one of the tools, but it's not the silver bullet.
Okay, so I think the summary is that we are looking at MOOC as a augmented tool to support education. Education doesn't have to be delivered in a university. It could be lifelong learning, everything along the entire lifespan of a professional. And this is what the MOOC is useful as a tool to help people learn. But it cannot replace a teacher. The teacher would provide the experience, the knowledge, the intuition to the students that cannot be replaced by just a computer program at this point. At least at this point, we don't have an artificial intelligence teacher that can replace what a professor can do. So we are still safe with our jobs. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. And let me take... Okay, so let's look at the one with the 13 votes. What training do faculty receive in blended learning and recorded lecture design before teaching online or blended courses? All right, so what do we do in the training for teachers in order to do MOOC?
Let me introduce what we did in the past. Tsinghua began to establish MOOC in 2013. We selected 5 MOOCs at the first time and make professor groups to design the MOOCs. And we, for example, our history MOOCs, we put more than 1 million RMB for build the MOOCs, so very, very good quality. After that experience, we built MOOCs to teach how to build MOOCs and how to do blended learning on campus. So we have MOOCs to help the teachers. Then we have a forum to the professors. We can invite the professors, they did MOOCs and blended learning at the very beginning to talk with the other professors. What's his experience? What's his he get to help the others. Every month we have a forum to it. Actually, many professor stars grown up. For example, I went to USA last month. I met the CEO from edX. Actually, since I was appointed as the director of online education office this January, at the first time announced, thought I was the other professor. I mean, in my presentation, Shijie, since he has the same family name as me. Announced, just wrote an email to me. Oh, congratulations, I know you. You visited me last time and we talked about MOOCs. I replied, no, it's not me. At that time, Shijie is an associate professor, but he's a professor now. There are other examples in our university. So many young associate professors may be interested in build MOOCs and do blended learning in the campus, since they can see all the examples, or they get huge success in doing it. So we did much to do the faculty development.
Any other views? So let me ask a show of hands. How many of you have developed MOOCs before? Raise your hands. Animation? Any, yeah. Any MOOCs, any one, two, okay, maybe less than 10 people who have developed MOOCs before. Now, you know, I have developed some MOOCs before, but my experience was that to develop 1 hour of MOOC, it took me almost 20 hours of effort because I do it over and over again to make it perfect. And as a result, if I have to go to 1 hour of lecture, it just takes me like maybe like 2 hours of preparation. But if I have to do a 1 hour of MOOC, it took me over 20 hours, over half a week of preparation, writing up the script, recording many, many times. So in a way, the effort is tremendous in developing a good MOOC. So I think that in the long run, if, in order to convince teachers to move forward to use MOOC, we have to overcome this effort, the overhead in developing MOOCs. It is the overhead at this point is tremendous in doing a good MOOC. Yes?
Can I just ask a question? What is the actual pedagogy? Sorry.
So you mentioned the time it takes to put together a MOOC, like a syllabus or a course or whatever. But what is the actual pedagogy embedded? Okay. So let's talk about the pedagogy and the training that faculty, that's the science behind teaching and learning embedded in blended learning.
The pedagogy is for you to present the material systematically, clearly, in an organized way to the students. That is, you don't want to repeat over the same message over and over again in the same MOOC, because it's going to be seen by many people offline. So you want the students to understand the material, you want to present it in a very organized and systematic fashion. More like writing a paper, like to present the argument systematically and not going back and forth, reiterate on the same point again. Because in a audio lecture, in a lecture, normally one would be able to repeat a message over and over again without having, because you think in real time on a concept. But in a MOOC, you have more time to organize the material so that you want to present the material in a more systematic fashion. So that's the pedagogy that you're looking at. But I think that the way that we are looking at MOOC is that it is like a tool to help students understand. Normally, we take a MOOC to do it, to ask students to view it offline. When they come to class, we do a flipped classroom. And then we discuss the material in a flipped classroom fashion with the students on the MOOC. So it is not a replacement for teaching, but more as a tool to aid the understanding, to improve the understanding of students. Yes?
I have just one comment to add to this. One of the things with, if you see the various online teaching material, and you look at the materials that is prepared for school kids, they are of substantially high quality and standard than that is prepared in universities. And when you look at it, why that difference comes in, the school, when someone is preparing for the school, they think, okay, the student requires that additional, they don't know anything, so you need to explain it in an easy, simple manner, have some experiment shown, interactive, and so on and so forth. And this is a lot of effort, and there are many companies involved in developing this. So these are professional designers, graphics designers, to animators, to many people involved in creating such things. But in the universities, we don't do that yet. We are heavily putting the effort back onto the faculty, to that one person. You need to be the choreographer, you need to be the designer, you need to be the director, everything. So I think that's where the problem is. We need to have more creative people involved in the design and thinking, and have to give a thought that the students, what we are going to get now, has gone through that system. And they are expecting something very different from what we are offering. So for future, it may be even more challenging because they would want even more. Because you're looking at all these technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, and all this stuff to be incorporated into it. And as professors, I'm completely handicapped to do it. So really would need a lot of help if we have to go and make it much wider and easy to use for the students involved.
Okay, so I think let's take on the one with the 12 votes. I think this is on the assessment. Assessment is important. What kind of assessment practices do you have to assess the quality of online courses as well as the quality of students' knowledge who went through these courses? I think this is actually an important topic that is of interest when people are developing MOOC. So Professor Yu?
Okay. For the assessment of the MOOCs, I think there is a common sense. Students can vote by their feet. So several teachers give the same course, for example, mathematics, Professor ABC. The students can vote by their feet. If the professor teaches very good, the students will go to his classroom. For the MOOCs, they are open online, so the learners will vote by their enrollment. You know, for the professor to do the MOOC is his reputation, open to the world wide. So he will be serious to his MOOCs, or he will be very ashamed to all over the world. It's very serious for himself. So I think the professor who determined to do the MOOC will be serious to it by himself. Then the enrollments will assess it. The university can also help him. I just told you we make MOOCs to help the teacher know how to do it, to do the forum, and we still get some assistant, do some work to assist professor to do MOOCs during his work. So many assessments help to assure the quality of our MOOCs. For the students come out, one aspect is the examinations. So examinations always works. So we can look at the scores, how the students did throughout the examinations, the problems, the challenge they finish, they can do. This one aspect. The other way is what the students feeling in their learning process. They feel very efficiency, very good learning experience, something like that. So these two aspects, we assessment the result of our blended learning.
Okay, any other views? In fact, I was talking to someone at Illinois. They were developing the IMBA and the ICS curriculum, meaning that they are offering MBA degrees as well as computer science degrees online for the master's degree level. Their experience shows that the effort to run this online is much more intensive than running a regular course at a university. You have to provide TA support. You have to provide online support. The professors is being glued to the computer a lot of times to answer questions. So in a sense, it is the overhead is quite large in terms of doing this. I mean, to do the good assessment, providing help online continuously is very intensive. Now, on the other hand, if you look at, for example, courses offered on Coursera, they are doing peer assessment, meaning that the students are grade their own the papers across the peers with the peers, and they provide peer support to help each student grading their papers on their own. So that may be a way to go. Whether this would be acceptable as an alternative to assessment in a university still remains to be seen. So I think that, like, for example, in Hong Kong, we are discussing using the online courses in Coursera, edX, and Xue as alternative to teaching. The professors are very happy doing that because now they don't have to go to lectures. They just ask the student to view the lectures online, and then they can stay in the office to answer questions. Now, I think we were somewhat concerned on whether this would be a replacement of regular teaching. So we asked teachers to say, if they are doing online teaching, they still have to go to class. They still have to go to class and do a flipped classroom to work with the students in the classroom in a face-to-face setting and to help the students directly. So this is actually a model. It is, I would say that it's a disruptive model. People are still experimenting in many different ways how to make it successful. It is the answer is not out yet. It is not definitive one way or the other. But we have seen, for example, in Coursera, they are moving to become more commercial. They are doing teaching for industries. They are offering courses to lifelong classes to people in industry, so that industry would pay them a handsome amount of money in order to support those courses. So this is becoming a different financial model in the way of how MOOCs are run today. So many things are happening. Yes?
Just to continue the topic of assessment, I'm just curious about how closely do you work with feedback of students who went through these courses? Because these courses are accessible for a very wide audience. So who monitors the feedback of the students, if you do monitor? And will this feedback help you to improve the quality of the courses? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. The degree satisfaction survey was taken on campus. So for the students in our university, we didn't do the survey online for the learners outside the university. We have 4 principles when doing MOOCs, making MOOCs. One is the university provide support. The supports including financial supports, teaching assistant, even the workload calculation. We will give triple workload calculation to the professors doing MOOCs at the first time. That is the university giving support. Second, the schools and the faculties be in charge of the quality of the MOOCs from the academic aspect. The third one is the teacher must involved in, put much efforts in the MOOCs. And the fourth one is the students should participate in the MOOCs construction. Since the MOOCs will be used to the students, their opinion, their learning experience should be considered during the construction of the MOOCs. So I just told you about the smart learning tool, teaching tool, Rain Classroom. And teachers can get the students' learning experience, the data from the tools, and it helps him to improve his teaching. For example, the teacher can know Rain Classroom is combined with 2 softwares in China, very popular. One is the PowerPoint we used here, and the other one is WeChat. It's a social, just like WhatsApp and something like that. Everyone uses WeChat in China. So the teacher put his slides to the students, everyone in the class, to his mobile phone. So we don't have no mobile phone classroom. We encourage students to take his mobile phone in the class, and the teacher used Rain Classroom to put his slides in his mobile phone. So the students can vote which slides I understand very well, which slides I don't understand very well. He votes, then the teachers can know, oh, if many students vote, I don't understand this slides, the teacher must need to consider how to improve his teaching next time. So many ways to improve our MOOCs and blended learning in the campus.
Professor Yu, can I just, on the issue of assessment, how do you make provision for students with disabilities or students with special needs within the MOOC platform in terms of assessment?
You mean how to help the disabled students?
Student with disabilities. Or student with disabilities, so different barriers to learning. We assume that students are the same, and then some students might be blind, some students might be not being able to hear, hard hearing, some students might have cerebral palsy. We've got a variety of different disabilities, so how is this catered for in the MOOC platform, especially with assessment?
Okay. For the disabled student, we can only help those one who can hear and who can see, who can hear. We don't have MOOCs for blinded students or other disabled students. There is a story. Since MOOCs can have at home, so we have a learner very difficult in walking, and blind is not very good since he can only see the size 72 in the word. It's very large. But he learned more than 20 MOOCs in X, and he told his story to us. You know, for our professor in business school, if he give a lecture to the other university, he will earn much money. But he did MOOCs, put much efforts in it, and no money. It's free for the students. But that's the story. This disabled student told the story to encourage the professor. The Professor Xiaoxing said, that's what encouraged me to do this for free, since he is helping the disabled students and many students. So.
I think to answer your question, I think the advantage of MOOC is that it is not a one-way lecture like a recording to student. What we have been working with MIT in the ethics lab to develop micro modules. The micro modules are just like snippets, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes of recording on a very specific topic. And what we are doing is to link together many micro modules into a graph. So therefore, they would form a hierarchy of different concepts. So a student going into a particular micro module, if they are not familiar with the topic, they cannot pass through the assessment, then they would backtrack into a previous module and try to understand all the background material and pass through that assessment hurdle before going to the next one. So in a way that the graphical model allows you to link many knowledge modules together. And therefore, that's what allow a student the ability to traverse the knowledge graph in a more systematic fashion. Now, in an interactive lecture, this is not possible, because if a student cannot understand a topic, they are stuck. They just have to go on and move on and go home and review the material on their own. But in an online setting, they can backtrack. If they cannot understand, they have the time to backtrack into a different module and continue on until they are happy with the understanding. So this is the power of using online learning that cannot be done in a traditional face-to-face lecture. And this is where the MOOC is powerful as a tool to help study. All right, and this is something this is a research that is still ongoing. We are working with MIT on doing this online learning graphical model for knowledge modules.
And if I may say, like, about the question of inclusion, the technology is not still there. So if you want to include like all different possibilities of inclusion, it's still not there. And when we say like massive, it depends on definition of massive, right? So given like about 7 billion people, are we covering half of them? No, right? So the question of, it's in the very early stage, and what we are looking at disruption is probably that okay, how many people are going to use it at the end of it? Is it going to be 10 times more of the university students or less?
Okay, so I think we would take on the next one for Rinat, 7 votes. What kind of support is provided at Satpayev University for high school graduates underprepared in math? What is a drop-off rate among them?
I told about the situation in math and in our actual secondary education. It's a really big problem when in 2016 we get practically 35% of a student who failed math calculus first in our school. So that pursued us to the change the model. So now we diagnose the student with less mathematical grammar, give them classes as a pre-calculus, and it works. So it helps to to reduce, at least in this year, we get 7% of a student who failed the math. So I hope this model that could be, it works. So I hope so we can share this our experience. Please welcome.
Okay, any other comments from the audience on this topic? Any comments from the panel on this? Okay, if not, then we would go to one question for 0 to 1 labs. What happened to the annual app building summer camps?
That's a very specific topic. I don't know how it's related to all of this.
Yeah.
But let me tell you a bit more about the approach we use in the summer boot camp. Basically, we have people, about 100 students, and our approach is very simple. We send them to the boot camp, and it's very intensive work. So most of the time they are learning mostly from each other. And we have really good content that's been taken from the internet, from the MOOCs, from the most of the companies like Apple, which is developer of the iOS platform. They provide the knowledge, great content, great courses for free. So we have the content there which is really good. And our approach is basically have these coaches, mentors, which are really like to work with students, and actually they're really good at from the pedagogical side. And so what we have with them is basically we track the students who are behind, and we try to work with them. And also students who are in front, who are leading the overall in the class, they start becoming mentors and help others. So the beauty of this offline approach is basically that you cannot replace human interaction because the bandwidth of information is really huge, and also there is something beautiful when people talk with each other face to face, because it's not just on the information channel.
Thank you. It's not just one channel you're interacting with. There is also some sort of emotional channel that's not visible, but we are getting in real time, you are getting the feedback from the student, and so actually we believe this in master apprentice model, which is really working well, especially in our classes. We have about 15 mentors for 80 to 90 students, so the ratio is really big. So for this year, we are continuing it for the first time, and of course the summer camp will happen. So that's the answer for the question, and the rest
I
is...
think that the interest for this question is that whether you can do this with a MOOC. Can you do this with a MOOC, or have you done a control experiment between using the summer camp and the one using a MOOC? Which one works better? Is it more effective using a summer camp?
We didn't do the controlled experiment, but I think that's what we should do, and have the results and share with the public actually what's the best approach, because we have a hypothesis that okay, it might work, it might be good. I think the results will actually interesting for us as well.
Exactly, because you said that the summer camp is very human intensive. You need a lot of trainers, and maybe using the summer camp, the students would feel better, they learn faster. But on the other hand, if you use something that is offline, the student can learn at their own leisure time. Maybe it's also effective as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another approach we've seen that the School 42 is that they have no lecturers, they have no professors. Everything is built on the platform, and that's even more different approach. So we don't know. We think that the coaches, mentors are really to be there, but on the same time, 42 schools approach is basically when you have everything offline, and the role of coaches is basically done by the peers. So they actually get more responsible about their friends, and they actually give the grades to each other. And you cannot actually cheat on your friends because there are lots of them, and it's their incentive to not let you to cheat. So that's interesting model as well. Okay. So maybe we should think about
I think good. Okay, any other views from the audience? Okay, so now let's take on the one with the 11 votes. Is a teaching staff always ready to get familiar with innovations in an evolving world? Isn't it time and money consuming for institutions? Now, this is a very interesting question, especially for university administrators, because like when from a university administrator's point of view, a university supports education. The main mission of the university is education. You are there to educate students. Research is important. But the teachers or the professors are not hired to do only research. And it seems that people are so much consumed about the citations, H-index, and they are forgetting the important mission that teaching is the most important part in education. So here, when we say, is the teaching staff always ready to get familiar with innovations in an evolving world? I think the answer is yes, of course. Because if you are not keeping up with industry, you got outdated. It becomes obsolete. It becomes useless. So therefore, that's why you have seen so many teachers going to classes using the lecture notes that are 10 years old, and they just keep on using the same set of material over and over again. So I think that the answer to me is that it is yes. Is it time and money consuming for institutions? No, they are paid to do that. It is not time and money consuming. It is that they are paid to do the job. This is the part of the job that they should be keeping up with themselves in this fast-changing world. So that's my view. Maybe I'll open this up to the panel members to see whether you have any view on this. Rinat?
Yeah, I agree. It's both time and money consuming, of course, but I think today the innovation and research becomes cheaper and cheaper. So with all these fab labs, with 3D printing, with all these models, so which you could suggest to your students, so you need less the highly sophisticated infrastructure, analysis and so on. So that what you could suggest to students, just implementing some Fab Labs. Sorry. And I think any university could allow to do this and implement applied education with more innovation and research.
Okay. Other views from the panel?
I just remembered something like from one of the codes or like an experience. So there was one scientist, he was working on a problem with a PhD student. It was in 1940s. So buying a 50-watt power supply was a very expensive business at that time. And they didn't have that 50 watts power supply. So the student comes to the professor and says, like, how do I do research? How do I replicate this work? It's 50 watts and it costs a lot and we don't have that money. So his reply was, okay, you don't need that 50 watts power supply. What you need is 50 watts brain. And that is what is relevant even now. When it comes to a lot of these things, it is just that one needs to sit and think through the situation and come up with new ideas, how to engage the students, how to make them motivated. And this innovation is just that. And to be up to date with what is going on. And that's why people do research, so that they are aware what is going on right now, whether it's in industry or whether in academic research or scientific. So bring those experiences into classroom. You can't, there is no excuse of not bringing those into classrooms. Because if you've done some interesting research, why not go and discuss that to the students? They will enjoy it. They don't like to see like something that is 10, 20 years and just exactly that. Because then you're not preparing the students to face the realities of the world and see what is going on, and they hear new terms. Why should they be afraid? I mean, why should the professor be afraid of saying those? So I think it's a question of, it's as you said, it's very natural. It's part of what the academics should do, and if some people are not doing it, well, that's something they should do.
Okay, any other views from the audience on this question? Okay, if not, then we move on to the next one. I think the next one has the 10 votes. Is Raining Classroom available for other world universities to use? I think it is, but like why would that be limiting to only Kazakhstan? Professor Yu?
The Rain Classroom is widely used in China. I think dozens, maybe hundreds of universities are using a Rain Classroom. This January, Improve College London, their Vice Provost came to Tsinghua, and it's her second time to learn about Rain Classroom in Tsinghua, and I will visit her next month to discuss the collaboration with Imperial College in London to do some smart teaching tools like Raining Classroom.
I think it is a very powerful tool that allows it to be more ubiquitous across different domains, across better sharing of resources. It is, I think it is the way to go. Any other views from the audience? Okay, if not, then we move on to the next set of questions. I think we have already finished the 8. The 7, okay, let's do the, there are good e-tools that can be used to vary methods and assist the group divisions and differentiation even in humanities. Would you recommend it? Would you recommend to ignore them at all? Yeah, it should be the other in the other group. So, but in any case, I think that So I think that it would be good to synergize in terms of like, are the tools that we are developing for STEM also applicable to humanities? I think that's the question that they are asking. Yes, Rinat?
Actually, I could share our experiences even in humanities. So Alex previously said that for kids, these tools well designed.
Right.
So we started this experiment with history of Kazakhstan disciplines in KBTU, and now we implemented in our university as a modern history of Kazakhstan. It's non-teacher lectures, so it's some sort of video with fully designed archives, artifacts, and so on. So the student watching it's like a sequel or remotely preparing for tutorial classes. So this also works. Yeah, maybe this way it could be some sort of blended system, and already to make this video well designed. So of course we hired and designers and all stuff to make the perfect video, which is interesting for students.
Actually, when we talk to the humanities professors to recruit them to develop MOOC courses, there was some resistance because they were saying like, how do I use MOOC courses to teach poetry, or how do I teach students how to do fine arts using MOOC? I think that MOOC has a place in every discipline. It's in some of the courses that are more skill-based. For example, in language courses, in some humanity courses like basic material on history, those can be taught easier in an animated fashion. It could make it more interesting than in a lecture-based setting. So there is a place for e-learning or e-tools in every discipline. So it's not only limiting to STEM as what we are discussing in this forum today. I think in the other forum, I'm sure they are also finding the e-tools to be extremely useful for teaching humanities courses. So let's move on to the next question and see. Okay. Okay, so let's say, Professor, to create your own MOOC platform or use existing one for higher education, which platform do you use at your university? I think that's a Shitang X, that's what he is talking about. So, but I think that let's take the one and okay. How do you consider number 4 votes? How do you consider the possibility of creating an integrated course on medicine and engineering in Kazakhstan? Okay, so that maybe for the local people in Kazakhstan, you can better answer this question.
Like for any applied knowledges, yeah, I agree. The fully MOOC model couldn't work. So possibly, yeah, it could be some blended courses where the student could also sit around classmates and work with a teacher with full experience in the handmade research, with emotions, with the experiment they do, and I think it could be possible to work. Yeah.
Okay. Any other views?
I think there is a lot of natural integration between medicine and engineering these days, given the amount of tools that are used, or engineering tools that are used in medicine, whether it's the devices that are being used, or for diagnostic purposes, the softwares that are used, or analytics in general. So there are a lot of integration there that is possible. So for example, like someone working in medicine would like to know how the image processing works, or how the data itself is analyzed, how the classifiers work, and things like this. And the same thing applies for engineers to understand biology, because many of these fields in engineering inspire from medicine and biology in one way or the other. So I think having an integrated course is a great idea, and that can push the limits of both engineering and medicine.
Yes. President Kasu.
Thank you. Indeed, this is one of the subjects that we are trying to get our hand around. And what struck me was recently I had a longish discussion with the executive vice dean of this new school of medicine at Illinois. Mm-hmm. And they also have inherited or built a hospital there. Mm-hmm. And he comes from engineering. Probably you know him. And he told me that one of the things that they started to do is, typically if you're in a medical school, professor, faculty take students around and do their rounds, for the students to understand how clinics and hospitals work and all this. And they decided to take the engineering faculty, engineering professors, on these rounds. So once a week, the engineering faculty goes and with their students and visits all the hospitals, and in real life starts to understand and hear what are the problems that hospitals face that are related to engineering and doctors face. So in a way it brought the whole, the two domains much closer together in a real life situation. So I think it's something that we are trying to do.
I think this is a very good observation. I think the unique part in Illinois' model is biomedical engineering, because they are not solely focused on medicine alone, but more on biomedical engineering. That brings to the next topic, which is like, there are all kinds of interdisciplinary topics that we are seeing today. Medicine and engineering is just one example. But there are many interdisciplinary topics today. It can be between statistics, risk management, business management, fintech. All these are interdisciplinary. So in a way that can we develop, do we need to develop e-tools or integrated course on every possible combination of courses that we can find on earth? That may not be possible, because then in that case, the amount of combinations will be too large. The question is that, can we package the material we develop for individual topics and make them an integrated course in a seamless fashion? And I think that's the challenge that we are all looking at. Because if you try to develop every possible combination of interdisciplinary courses in the university, then the effort will be too large. But on the other hand, you can develop basic knowledge material or knowledge modules on individual topic. You can do it for statistics. You can do it for legal topics. You can do it for common law. Can all this be packaged together in somewhat of a seamless fashion so that a student interested in engineering and statistics can go and take a combination of those courses to arrive at a good knowledge of that background? I think that is a more refined direction of using the e-tools, how to package the e-tools together in a seamless fashion so that people can acquire knowledge across different disciplines, rather than just saying that can we develop a course on this combination, that combination, because the number of combinations will be endless at the end. So I think that's something that I think that along that direction may be something easy to go or important to go.
I think that's very important in the sense like it's content. But along with content, what comes is time. So for certain skills, you probably need more time than certain other skills. So the whole idea of 4-year or 5-year of degree program might have to change. In this case, if you want to have, so we are probably looking at different models of skills, how to achieve those skills. So some courses, maybe interdisciplinary courses may take 3 years, some may take 8 years. So, and it's in fact taking it even these days. People are continuing one degree followed by another degree followed by another to achieve those skills. So probably we need to structure it in a way, in a seamless way to focus on. And I think these are natural evolution. We can't avoid it.
Actually, this is a topic that I would also discuss in the afternoon in my presentation. I think what is important today is that we need to consider the role of a university. In 50 years, our university is going to stay in the same model as what we are seeing today. I remember when I was a student, many years ago, when I study a topic, it takes 10 years for the computers to change from a PC to a server. Then it takes 10 years for the internet to mature in the 90s. But now today, technologies are taking 2 or 3 years to turn around. It's much faster than what we are seeing 30 or 40 years ago. So now the question to us is that in the next 50 years, the technologies are going to multiply and change so quickly that students enrolled in an education in a university are going to become outdated immediately when they get out. What do they do when they finish, and how do they survive in the next 50 years in their career? Because they don't have a chance to go back to a university. They cannot come back and take courses over and over again and relearn. They become obsolete very quickly. In fact, I saw some of my friends, because they graduated at the same time as me when we were in graduate school. They got laid off because they were using the same knowledge 30 or 40 years ago. They were not able to update themselves. They just used the same skill set they learned many years ago, and they cannot survive in the profession. So in a sense that we have to look at the education model that we are seeing today and how to evolve the education model in a university to adapt to this changing world. I think that's the question that we should all be thinking about in the long run. Okay, so let's take on the next question. So maybe let's take the one in the middle. It is good to use innovation in teaching and learning, but how do you make sure that they help to reach a set goal of the subject? Okay, any comments from the panel? How do you make sure they achieve the goal?
Okay, let me try.
Yeah.
As I said in my presentation, the world is changing. The students are changing. So the education in university must change, or we will drop out at this disruptive age. So how we make sure that we help to reach a set goal of the subject? I think we should do the innovation to the trend of the age. And let's see what the professors, what the students, what the society, the assessment, the experiment of our education change. For MOOCs, I think every aspect think it's a future trend. We should do that. So how to make sure everyone can see?
Actually, my view on this is that, in traditional education, when you set the goal for a subject, you're looking at a semester of courses, or a 4-year curriculum. So therefore, you said, I set out some goal to teach somebody to do mechanical engineering, and after 4 years, I would look at some outcomes to see whether the student achieved those set outcomes. But in e-learning or innovation in teaching, I think that the game has changed, because we are no longer looking at 4-year curriculum, not looking at a course. We are looking at something like half an hour or 10 minutes. Can you set a smaller goal to achieve something within 10 minutes? It would be much easier to do than to set a goal for a whole semester or whole 4 years. So I think that in this way, the innovation and teaching has actually allowed you to divide and conquer. You divide the problem into much smaller problems and try to have more refined goals in a smaller module. So this will be easier to do because then each one of those modules can do the best of what you can do. And then you string all those modules together to allow students to acquire certain combination of skills. So this is the way that innovation in teaching that is changing the way that education is done in the future. Any other comments from the?
I think like it's a mode of how you teach it. Like when you talk about innovation, to a great extent, a project-based learning will be very different experience for a student compared to like a regular classroom experience. So the goals, some are short-term and some are long-term. So the short-term ones are measurable, like with the learning outcomes and many other things. Whereas the long-term, you have to see, you have to wait for maybe like few years to really see has it paid off. So the effort that has gone into that course, did it translate into something meaningful? Did the students come up with like later on a company, or like did they grow? Did they find something in the course which led to a career in PhD? For example, when my decision to take a PhD was like in the first year of my undergrad, because of one professor. The way he taught the subject was very interesting, and that triggered the interest. And then the possibility happened. Okay, why not do something? So I think it's just this, that it triggers something, and do we provide those triggers for long term and short term?
Okay, so let's. I think that we have time. Yeah. Any other?
Just a short comment in this context. So the innovation definitely should be a part of the applied education, and the result, it's not what student produce in a class or investigate, but actually what is important, what student get the procedure, the way how to reach something using science and innovation. So and it helps in the future for him to definitely to apply this knowledge for other profession and other area.
Okay, so I think that we have time for one more question. I think the one that we can combine, the one with the 6 and the one road, together, because this is something important. The society actively discusses the importance of STEM discipline. Do you think that this trend would affect the subsequent reduction in the number of grants for the non-STEM disciplines? I think this is something that we are always debating in society today. That is, are we focusing too much on STEM today at the expense of non-STEM?
I think the thing here is like there is no field today where you don't use technology. So the question of like whether these are two separate things is a debate. STEM because I was reading one area in humanities, digital humanities, and they were looking into analyzing documents to many other things, and they're using computational tools. Same thing with anthropology to many other fields. They're using CAD tools to many other things. So the funding may not be, my thinking is like it's still how you classify it, right? So you say the funding is for ICT. Now the people who apply for ICT may be coming from anthropology to computer science. It may not be just computer science people applying to that funding. So it's just.
I think that they don't mean that. What they mean is that, like, if an anthropology professor is coming to apply for ICT grants, they are not as competitive in getting awarded. So I think that's the reality that in seeing, because I'm also responsible for funding in Hong Kong, and we are constantly seeing this debate between STEM and non-STEM topics. When people in humanities, social sciences, they are always saying that, like, are we putting too much emphasis on STEM and the innovation, the disruptive tools that we are developing is only meant for STEM. But in a sense that I think that for non-STEM education, it is also extremely important for whole person development, because in a way that we want to develop citizens that are not nerds. They are not just only knowing technologies, but in a way it's a whole person that we want to develop to be good citizens of the society that can contribute to the society. So in a way that there is always a place for the non-STEM discipline in society today, and they are equally important as a STEM education that we are seeing. So I think with that, we are coming to the end of this session, and I think that we have generated some very interesting discussion in this session, and I'd like to thank all the panel members for the contribution as well from the questions from the audience. Thank you very much.